Welcome to another episode of Finsherpa videos. We are grateful for all the love and support that you have been pouring over the last few months. As human beings, one of the most important tasks that we do every single day, apart from eating and sleeping, is making decisions. Did you know that as humans we make up to 35,000 decisions on a daily basis, every single day? Right from the moment we start, whether we want to stop the alarm or snooze the alarm, the decision goes on right through the day till we hit the sack at the night. That given, there is not much attention given to how can we make these decisions on a better basis. And that's what we're going to explore today. And that too by a very interesting book that I read recently of Rolf Dobelli. And the book is called Art of Thinking Clearly. What a beautiful title. Don't we all want to think clearly? And that's exactly what this book does. It's a simple book. You know, there are lots of books that I have read on decision making, behavioral biases, and so on and so forth. In fact, there is one by Daniel Kahneman, who is a Nobel laureate, who has written Think Fast, Think Slow. But all those books are a little bit tough to read for an average investor. The beauty of this book by Rolf Dobelli is that it contains 100 topics. Each topic is covered in 2 or 3 pages. Very easy to read, very easy to relate. You don't need to read this book all at one go. You have to read one topic at a time. And that's the beauty of this book. So it can be lying on your desk and you can refer to it. It'll take you about 5, 7, 10 minutes at max to complete one chapter, which is about 2-3 pages. And you will get the essence of this. That's what this book is all about. Who is Rolf Dobelli? Rolf Dobelli is actually a PhD in Switzerland. Yes, absolutely. He's not an American author like most other cases. He is from Europe, he is Swiss, and he has spent an enormous time in understanding behavioral biases. He has been a contributor in Bloomberg, Washington Post, and so many others. He is a prolific thinker and a writer. And this is by far his best book that he has written, been a bestseller in so many markets and so on and so forth. I fundamentally believe, like I mentioned, decision making is one of the superpowers that we can keep getting better at if we know what our biases are and where we are going wrong. And that's where I believe this book excels beautifully. Now I'm going to talk about 5 biases out of this book that appealed to me and which I was able to relate to. The first bias I'm going to talk about is called anchoring. The anchoring bias is nothing but when you talk to anybody or when you negotiate, you buy fruits from the vegetable vendor. The vendor actually tells you a certain rate for the basket of mangoes and you essentially try and bargain from it. What the vendor is trying to do is anchor you to that. When you start understanding this, then you kind of ask more fundamental questions. I'll give you a classic example. Every time I left my vehicle for service, the service mechanic used to give me a quote in the morning that it'll cost me about 15,000 rupees by the end of the day because he would mention that this may need to be changed, that may need to be changed, so on and so forth. I'd be a little worried about spending so much of money, but when I came back in the evening, the same mechanic will say, while the estimate was 15,000, you only spent 10,000. You know, I'd end up feeling very, very happy about it. You know, it gives you a very pleasant feeling when you spent much lesser. But in reality, over a period of time and after reading this book, I realized essentially the mechanic had anchored me to a higher rate. How can you overcome this bias? By questioning that anchor. Is that anchor number or whatever be that, is that the right anchor? And if you kind of analyze it and if you can get the truth behind it, you will be a better negotiator and you will find greater value in life. That's anchoring. Beautiful. The next one I want to talk about is what is called a herd mentality. And we see this often in the stock market. When the stock market is going up, you have everybody, including your uncle and aunt, wanting to buy stocks and mutual funds. On the contrary, when the stock market is down significantly for whatever reason, everybody wants to sell in spite of losses. This is what we call herd. And from time immemorial, right from the early ages of human beings, we have survived because we have been in herds. It's been a survival instinct that's been built into us. But today, the same herd mentality will make you poorer in investing. Not just in investing, in every other field. We see people buying unwanted apartments which don't yield returns to them because they just feel it's a nice thing to do because their friend is doing, their relative is doing, so on and so forth. So herd mentality is one more a bias that we need to be aware of when we make decisions. The third, recency bias. On September 11, 2001, two planes hit the Twin Towers in the US and lots of people died, a very tragic terrorist attack. But the statistics proves that the months following that attack, there was a spurt in sales in life insurance. Nothing had changed, but suddenly there were lots of people who were believing that life insurance was suddenly needed by them. This is what we call a recency bias. Recency bias is when a recent event kind of impacts our thinking so deeply that we start taking decisions only with that in mind, ignoring all the past information. So that's what we call a recency bias. Typically, you would find that recency bias impacts everybody in a variety of different ways. Even when you see a value in something, you allow that decision not being taken because at some point in time, that investment or that stock or that land may have appeared expensive to you at that point in time. So recency bias is a very, very important aspect, especially in decision making. Next, endowment effect. And this came about a few weeks ago when I was talking to a customer. The customer said, Babu, I bought an apartment some time back and that apartment hadn't been let out, wasn't kind of giving him any returns, was almost a dead investment. He mentioned that, I had bought it for about 75 lakhs. After 5 years, after considering all the investment, I got an offer at about 85 lakhs, only 10 lakhs higher than that. The logical thing would have been to sell it, but he said, I didn't. And he said, you know what? In my mind, I believe that I'll get 1 crore of rupees for that apartment. This is what we call an endowment effect. An asset in the hands of the investor or the individual is always worth more than what it's actually valued at. When I own something, I believe it's more precious than actually the value of it. So this is an important bias because if you have to transact, if you have to negotiate, if you have to sell, then you need to be aware that this bias can kind of badly inhibit your decision making. Beware of endowment, beware that the assets that you own are not necessarily more valuable than something in the marketplace. That's an important bias. And we all have it. The apartment we have, the investment that we believe we have done, etc., etc. We all believe they're far more worth than maybe the market offers. And maybe we are wrong. That's endowment effect. Last, I want to talk about action bias. Lots of people believe that you have to constantly keep acting. The stock market traders are a classic example of action bias. But, there's a statistics that in a penalty kick in a goal post, the goalie usually stands in the middle before the goal kick is taken, and he either swings to the right or dives to the left. He does one of the two. Although statistically it's proven that 33% of the time it goes to the left, 33% goes to the right, and 33% it comes bang in the center. Yet, no goalie you will see who is not dived, even if he is diving to the wrong end, because it's practically impossible for him in split second to know which direction the ball is coming. So he's going to dive in good hope. But numerous sportsmen were questioned on this. And they said, even if the goalie just stood still, 33% of the goals would have been saved. The answer to that was, he would have saved the goals, but he would have been looking stupid if the ball passed him on the left or the right. Because when you do some action and still you lose, people are willing to forgive you. But when you stay still and you lose, people are unwilling to forgive you. And that's a bias we all have. The next time you're going to take an action, remember, would it be more rewarding
just sitting still as the 5-star chocolate ad comes. Be still and do nothing. Is that even a good idea? Is something that you need to question. So there are lots of nuggets of wisdom in this book that one can get. I'd urge you to read. As a student of investments, I got tremendous value out of The Art of Thinking Clearly. God bless Rolf Dobelli. I'm sure you will too.